Hey everyone, welcome back. Thanks for joining Tony and I for another day in our 20 for 20 series. Today we're going to break down who we think might be the third best receiver in Alabama's passing game next year. Tony, how are you doing today?
Doing pretty well. Doing pretty well.
Let's just kind of get right into it. Obviously we have two great receivers from Alabama leaving. Who do you think is going to kind of step up and fill that void next year?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously we're skipping past the first two receivers, and
Mhm.
obviously Alabama returns its leading receiver in Devontae Smith, as well as probably one of the most electrifying players in all of college football, in Jalen Waddle. That third receiver is pretty interesting, and in recent years we've seen Alabama go out of primarily three receiver sets, so that's a really important spot. I think the popular name is John Metchie the third. He's a guy that we really saw show out during last year's A-Day game. He didn't really make too much of a contribution his first year, but nobody really of this
Mhm.
next bunch we're going to talk to really did. He'd be an interesting guy to throw into that mix. I think Slade Bolden is a guy that I
Mhm.
think could actually surprise some people and really get really compete for that third receiver spot. He's a guy I really like him in the slot. Obviously, we've seen what he can do in open space. Alabama uses him in that wildcat uh, formation, and so I like the idea of maybe putting him on the slot. Um, putting I actually don't. You could put Waddle in the slot too, but like
Mhm.
putting maybe Waddle and Devontae on the outsides and putting Bolden in that slot. But I could see Waddle going there too. A few other guys too. Tyrell Shavers, if he steps in, he can bring another dimension to this offense, just being a 6'6" guy. So there's a lot of ways you can go with this one.
Do you think that with Bolden, do you think his experience playing the Wildcat quarterback does that help? Do you think that helps his case or hurts his case, or does it really make a difference here?
I don't really think that that's kind of apples to oranges in terms of like actually being the receiver. I just think that has shown us his athleticism,
Hmm.
and I think that shows like just what he can do with the ball in his hands, and maybe you just try to get the ball in somebody like that's hands. That being said, I think you look at the athleticism of John Metchie. It's also really good. It might just depend on what Alabama wants to do. Heck, I just talked about putting Waddle inside. Maybe it makes sense to put Tyrell Shavers as a third guy as well to kind of give you more of an outside threat, more of a guy that could you know catch some home run balls deep. He's also got some speed. So it kind of depends on how Alabama wants to break everything down. But there could be a really close competition between at least three of those guys.
Yeah, and kind of as you alluded to, this whole group of guys we're talking about today, they didn't really get the chance to prove themselves, and honestly, I think people are going to say my pick is going to be John Mechie just after that A-Day performance, but I think people are going to look at it and they're going to go, yeah, but Mechie didn't do anything after A-Day. How could he with Devontae Smith, Henry Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy, and Jalen Waddle all ahead of him? Like, it's not like Alabama didn't have enough targets for Jalen Waddle to get the ball as much as he should have, much less John Mechie.
Yeah, yeah. It'd be interesting to see, how they're going to spread it out as much as it's still going to be the state. You obviously have two receivers that
Hmm.
really separate themselves in terms of experience and probably at this point talent. Um, in Waddle and Smith, I'd be interested to see how Alabama's going to disperse the ball. Is it going to be primarily to those two receivers? Or are you still going to have more of a spread out attack? Um, you got to look at it too. If defenses start to focus on Smith and Waddle, it could
Hmm.
create some big opportunities for whoever's getting that third spot. So that guy could really be a breakout player in this offense.
Hmm.
Considering the opportunities and maybe the looks that they'll get.
Yeah, and I think you're kind of right, or at least you touched on something that I think Alabama. I don't know that there's going to be a number three or even a number four guy that's going to be that has that sort of same target share that those top four guys had last year. I think it's probably going to be. I think all these guys are going to be involved a healthy amount.
Yeah, obviously, and another thing to consider too is just how is the distribution going to be? That's one of the things I think Tua did the best is
Hmm.
find the open guy no matter who the open guy was. You can say that, Devontae Smith led Alabama in receiving last year. He did. But I mean, Jerry Jeudy actually got the most catches. And I don't really think that there was ever a moment where like, oh, the ball is definitely going to this guy in a certain situation. I think
Mhm.
at times with Jalen Hurts and Calvin Ridley, it seemed like the ball was just always gonna. If it was a close play, the ball's gonna the play is being drawn up
Mhm.
for Calvin. I mean, heck, we saw,
Yeah.
them doing rock, paper, scissors for a route one time. That's how random it felt.
Yeah.
And I know that that was just a circumstantial, that was a one-time thing that kind of blew up. But, just the fact that that mentality of, everyone's going to be open. Uh,
Yeah.
so I don't know. I'd like to see maybe how, I'd like to really kind of go back and look at, who did Mac target the most. It didn't really seem like
Mhm.
he was targeting one person uh, over the other when I was watching, but obviously he targeted Waddle a lot in the Iron Bowl against Auburn.
Yeah,
Waddle
and
went
then
off, but then again he targeted Judy a lot in the Citrus Bowl. So I don't
yeah.
really know if you can really break it down into who he prefers. I would assume it's still going to be rather spread out.
Yeah, I agree with you. Also, just in case you want some numbers, 163 targets gone just between the two guys that we expect to
A lot.
hear their names called on Thursday. And then, that's 42% of Alabama's target share. That's just kind of poof, gone. So lots up for
Yeah,
grabs.
that's interesting. Did you have the numbers for what Devontae got target wise?
Yeah, off the top of my head, yeah, I think Devontae is. I think he got like 88. Devontae was second, so Judy led the team in targets, and
Uh huh.
he had 108, and then that leaves Ruggs down with about 50,
So you're
50.
probably thinking about like that the three of those guys was probably somewhere in the like 60 70%
Yeah,
of
there was a significant gap between Judy and Devontae Smith. So,
yeah.
I mean, which I think is what people expect. I mean, it didn't always show up in games, but Judy was the focal point.
Yeah, yeah, and I think there will be a focal point, whether it be I kind of expect it actually to be Devontae, the experienced guy,
Mm,
and I think Waddle will get his targets as well. But I think maybe you shaded a little bit more to those two than what it was last year, because you don't have 3 first-round picks on this year's roster yet, at least. Maybe Metchie turns into a first-round pick, but I don't think you can comfortably say this guy is a first-round pick. Think you can probably say that with Waddle and Smith, and you could have definitely probably said
mm,
that with all 4 of the top receivers last year. So I do think you might shade it more to the people that are, proven, talents or proven
yeah.
commodities. But that being said, I think that there'll still be plenty of carries or not carries, but receptions and targets for the third receiver as well.
Yeah, so I think Tony and I we kind of touched on, three names that stand out to us. John Metchie, obviously, who's the, sort of the A-Day hero from the last A-Day that we'll see for a while. And then, we have Slade Bolden, we have the Wildcat quarterback. I think he's probably the most interesting just out of any of these guys because he can sort of do the most. Obviously, he might fill that Wildcat role next year. That'll be interesting. And then we can have Tyrell Shavers. He's the big guy. 6'6", I believe, right, Tony?
Yeah, yeah, six
Yeah.
six guy. It supposedly can run in the 4.4s as well, so that's a deadly combination.
So yeah, so those are kind of the three options. So we want to hear feedback from y'all. Do y'all have a favorite, a guy that you want to stand out among these three? Obviously none of us have really seen any of these guys. So who sort of stands out? Is it Metchie? Is it Shavers because of his size, or do you like watching Slade Bolden run the Wildcat? Do you think you want to see him more involved next year? So definitely comment. Let us know what you think, and like and subscribe so y'all can get updates when the videos roll out. We're rolling them out every day with our 20 for 20 series. And thanks for tuning in today, and join us back tomorrow.